Marcus Chen sat at the back of the classroom, his dark eyes focused on the holographic star map floating above the instructor's desk. Around him, dozens of alien students whispered and chittered in their various languages. Some were tall and strong like walking trees. Others glowed with soft light from their crystal skin. A few moved so fast they seemed like blurs. Marcus looked ordinary next to them. He was average height for a human, with black hair and brown skin. His uniform was clean but simple. He did not glow, did not tower over others, and did not move at super speed. To most of his classmates at the Galactic Confederation Military Academy, he looked weak. The academy sat on a massive space station called Kepler VII. It orbited a bright blue star, far from Earth. Students came from hundreds of worlds to learn military tactics, space combat, and leadership. It was the most important military school in known space. Marcus was the only human student. "Today we study the Battle of Vega Prime," announced Instructor Veltar. She was a Zenthari, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with gray skin and sharp claws. Her voice was deep and commanding. "Who can tell me why the Federation forces failed?" Several hands shot up. Thick tentacles waved in the air. Crystal appendages sparkled with light. Marcus kept his hands folded on his desk. Thakmor, a young Zenthari noble, stood up without being called. His family ruled 3 star systems, and he never let anyone forget it. "The Federation was weak," he said with confidence. "They sent soldiers from soft worlds, planets with easy gravity and no real predators. When they faced the hegemony's warriors, they broke like glass." Other students nodded agreement. Many came from what they called warrior worlds, planets where only the strong survived. They believed this made them natural fighters. "An interesting point," Veltar said. "Mr. Chen, what do you think?" Marcus felt every eye in the room turn to him. He could hear the soft sounds of breathing, of heartbeats, of fabric shifting. His senses were sharp, always alert. On his homeworld, you had to be ready for danger every second. "The Federation lost because they underestimated their enemy," Marcus said quietly. "They thought size and strength were everything, but the hegemony used better tactics. They struck fast and retreated. They made the Federation chase them into ambushes." Thakmor's eyes narrowed. "Tactics are for the weak. A true warrior faces his enemy directly." "Sometimes the smart warrior lives longer than the brave one," Marcus replied. A few students laughed, but not in a mean way. They thought it was funny that the small human dared to argue with Thakmor. The young Zenthari's face darkened with anger. After class, Marcus walked alone through the station's corridors. The artificial gravity was lighter than Earth's, making him feel like he was floating. Everything here was designed for the comfort of species that evolved on gentler worlds. Earth was different. Earth was what the Confederation called a Class 12 Deathworld. The gravity was crushing. The weather was violent. Every continent had predators that could kill you in dozens of ways. Humans evolved not as the biggest or strongest species, but as the smartest and most adaptable. They learned to survive when everything wanted to eat them. In the Academy's combat simulator, Marcus consistently scored in the top 10%. In survival training, he finished courses that left other students exhausted or injured. In tactical planning, his strategies were simple but effective. His instructors noted his performance, but thought they understood it. They believed he was trying extra hard to prove himself. They saw a primitive from a backward world working desperately to keep up with more advanced species. They were wrong. That evening, Marcus sat in the Academy's observation deck, looking out at the stars. The view was beautiful, but it also made him homesick. Earth was 43 light-years away. He wondered if his family was watching the same stars. "Mind if I sit here?" Marcus turned to see Kira Velnash, a Vextai student whose crystal skin glowed with soft purple light. She was one of the few who ever spoke to him outside of class. "Sure," Marcus said. Kira sat down beside him. Her people were known for their incredible intelligence and photographic memories. They could process information faster than most computers. "You made Thakmor angry today," she said. "I noticed. Especially by someone he thinks is inferior." Marcus turned to look at her. "What do you think?" Kira's glow shifted to a thoughtful blue. "I think you are more than you appear to be. Your test scores are excellent. Your tactical thinking is advanced. But you try to hide it. Maybe I just don't like attention. Or maybe you learned that standing out can be dangerous." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Kira was smart, maybe too smart. "What makes you think that?" "I studied your world's history. Earth has been at war with something for most of its existence, first with other humans, then with machines from the Outer Rim. Your people learned to survive in conditions that would kill most species. And I think the Academy does not understand what they have in you. They see a primitive trying to prove himself. They do not see what I see." Kira's glow shifted to deep green, the color her people showed for certainty. A predator trying very hard to pretend he is prey. Marcus did not answer, but something cold flickered in his eyes for just a moment. It was gone so fast that most beings would have missed it. But Kira had very good eyes. She stood up to leave. "Be careful, Marcus. Thakmor has friends, and they all think humans are weak." After she left, Marcus continued staring at the stars. He thought about home, about the wars he had fought, about the things he had seen and done. The Academy was supposed to be a chance for peace, a chance to learn and grow without constantly watching for danger. But some habits were hard to break. Even here, safe among the stars, part of him remained alert. Part of him remembered what it felt like to hunt and be hunted. He hoped he would not need those memories, but if he did, they would be ready. The combat training room was filled with the sound of bodies hitting padded floors. Students from dozens of worlds practiced hand-to-hand fighting under the watchful eye of combat instructor Veltar. The air smelled of sweat and effort. Marcus wrapped his hands carefully, checking each finger for proper movement. He had learned this ritual long ago, back when a poorly wrapped hand could mean death in the border wars. Around him, other students prepared in their own ways. The Zentharis stretched their long limbs and tested their claws. The Rakin moved in quick, nervous circles. The Vextai meditated, their crystal skin glowing with calm blue light. "Today we practice adaptive combat," Veltar announced. Her voice echoed off the metal walls. "Each species fights differently. You must learn to face opponents who do not think like you, move like you, or fight like you." She began calling out pairs. Vextai faced off against the plant-like Florians. Marcus waited patiently, knowing what would come. "Chen and Thakmor," Veltar called. The room went quiet. Everyone knew about the tension between the human and the Zenthari noble. Thakmor was over 7 feet tall and built like a living weapon. His claws were sharp enough to cut metal. His strength could crush bones. Marcus was 5 feet 8 inches tall and weighed maybe 160 pounds. Thakmor stepped onto the training mat with a confident smile. His friends gathered around the edge, expecting to see the small human taught a lesson about his place in the galaxy. "Standard rules," Veltar said. "No permanent damage. Fight until one yields or cannot continue." Thakmor cracked his knuckles, and the sound was like breaking wood. "Try not to cry, little human," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. He took a loose fighting stance, hands open, weight balanced on the balls of his feet. To most observers, he looked relaxed, almost casual. But Kira, watching from the side, noticed the change in his eyes. They had gone flat and cold, like winter ice. "Begin," Veltar commanded. Thakmor charged forward, using his size and reach advantage. He threw a powerful right hook that would have knocked out most opponents. It was a good punch, technically correct for his species. Marcus was not there when the punch arrived. He had stepped aside at the last possible moment, letting Thakmor's momentum carry him forward. The Xanthari stumbled, off balance. Marcus could have struck then, but he stepped back instead. "Lucky," Thakmor growled. He attacked again, this time with a series of claw strikes, designed to overwhelm with speed and aggression. Marcus moved between the attacks, like water flowing around stones. He blocked what he could not avoid, redirected what he could not block. Each movement was small, efficient, calculated. The watching students began to murmur. This was not what they had expected. Thakmor's attacks became more desperate. He was stronger and faster than Marcus, but the humans seemed to know where each strike would land before it was thrown. It was like fighting a ghost. "Stand still and fight," Thakmor roared. Marcus finally went on the offensive. He ducked under a wild swing and drove his fist into Thakmor's solar plexus. The impact was precise, hitting a nerve cluster that existed in most humanoid species. Thakmor gasped and doubled over. Before the Xanthari could recover, Marcus grabbed his extended arm and used Thakmor's own weight against him. The throw was perfect, sending the much larger alien crashing to the mat. Thakmor lay there for a moment, stunned. The room was completely silent. "Yield," Marcus said quietly. Thakmor's face burned with shame. His friends stared in shock. No one moved. "I said yield," Marcus repeated, his voice still calm. "I yield," Thakmor whispered, his pride crumbling. Veltar stepped forward. "Winner, Chen. Good adaptive technique. Both fighters showed skill." But everyone knew this had been more than just skill. The human had made the Academy's top Xanthari fighter look like a clumsy child. As the class ended, Thakmor's friends gathered around him. There was Drakmor, his cousin, built like a walking mountain, 2 Rakan speedsters named Quickstrike and Fleetfoot, and another Xanthari called Ironclaw, famous for his vicious temper. "This cannot stand," Drakmor rumbled. "The family honor demands satisfaction." "He made you look weak in front of everyone," Ironclaw added. A primitive from a backward world, defeating a noble of the Xanthari Empire. Thakmor's hands clenched into fists. The humiliation burned in his chest like acid. All his life, he had been told he was superior, stronger, faster, better. The idea that a small human could best him was impossible to accept. "We will teach him his place," he said finally. "Tonight." "The instructors will not approve," Quickstrike pointed out. "Fighting outside of class is forbidden." "Then we make sure no instructors find out," Fleetfoot suggested. "The hydroponics bay is empty after evening meal. No security cameras there." "What if he does not come?" Drakmor asked. Thakmor smiled, but there was no humor in it. "He studies there every night, reads those primitive paper books from his world. We will be waiting." That evening, Marcus made his way to the hydroponics bay, as he did every night. The growing plants reminded him of Earth's forests. He could study without the constant noise and chatter of his fellow students. He carried his datapad and a small collection of physical books from home. Real paper was rare in the galaxy, but humans still used it. There was something comforting about the feel of actual pages, the smell of ink and binding glue. Marcus found his usual spot near a row of tomato plants and settled down to read. He was studying the Battle of Kepler Station, trying to understand how Admiral Martinez had won against impossible odds. He was so focused on his reading that he almost missed the soft sound of footsteps on metal flooring. Almost. Marcus looked up to see 5 figures entering the hydroponics bay. Thakmor led the group, his face set in hard lines. Behind him came his cousin and friends, spreading out to block the exits. "Good evening, Chen," Thakmor said, his voice dripping with false politeness. "We thought we might have a conversation." Marcus slowly closed his book and set it aside. He could see the anger in their eyes, smell the adrenaline starting to flow through their systems. His own body began preparing for what might come, muscles loosening, senses sharpening. "What kind of conversation?" he asked calmly. "The kind where you learn your place," Drakmor growled, cracking his knuckles. Marcus stood up slowly, keeping his movements non-threatening. "I think there might be a misunderstanding here." "No misunderstanding," Thakmor said, stepping closer. "You embarrassed me today, made me look weak. That cannot be allowed to stand." "I was just following the exercise rules," Marcus said. "Nothing personal." "Everything is personal," Ironclaw snarled. "You think you are better than us? A primitive from a backward Deathworld?" Marcus held up his hands peacefully. "Talk this through like civilized beings." But he could see it was too late. They had made up their minds before coming here. This was going to happen whether he wanted it or not. "Please," Marcus said one last time, "don't do this." Thakmor smiled coldly and reached out to grab Marcus's shoulder. "Too late for begging, human." As the alien's clawed hand touched him, something changed in Marcus's posture. The calm, peaceful student disappeared. What remained was something that had learned to kill before it learned to walk. Something that had evolved on a world where mercy was a luxury few could afford. The moment Thakmor's clawed hand touched Marcus's shoulder, everything changed. Marcus moved. It happened so fast that later, when security reviewed the recordings, they would have to slow the footage down to see what actually occurred. To the 5 aliens surrounding him, it seemed like the quiet human student simply exploded into motion. Marcus grabbed Thakmor's extended wrist with both hands. His grip was precise, fingers finding pressure points that existed in most humanoid anatomy. The Zenthari noble was strong enough to bench press a small vehicle, but strength meant nothing when your nervous system was being attacked by someone who knew exactly where to apply force. Thakmor's hand went numb instantly. Marcus twisted the arm, using leverage and anatomy against size and power. There was a wet popping sound as the shoulder joint separated. Thakmor screamed and dropped to his knees. 3 seconds had passed. Drakmor rushed forward, roaring with rage at seeing his cousin injured. He was even bigger than Thakmor, with muscles like steel cables under his gray skin. His charge would have flattened most opponents. Marcus sidestepped at the last possible moment, just like he had done in the training room. But this time, as Drakmor passed him, Marcus drove his elbow into the base of the big alien's skull. The strike hit the nerve cluster that controlled balance and motor function. Drakmor crashed into a rack of growing plants and did not get up. 6 seconds had passed. The 2 Rakhan moved next. Quickstrike and Fleetfoot were used to being the fastest beings in any room. Their species could move so quickly they seemed to blur. They attacked from opposite sides, thinking their speed would overwhelm the human. Marcus was faster. Not in straight-line speed, but in reaction time. Humans from Earth had evolved to track multiple predators simultaneously. Their brains could process threats coming from several directions at once. While the Rakhan were quick, they were used to prey that could only focus on one attacker at a time. Marcus dropped low as Quickstrike's clawed foot whistled over his head. At the same time, he swept Fleetfoot's legs, sending the alien tumbling. Before Quickstrike could adjust his attack, Marcus grabbed the extended leg and twisted. The joint lock was textbook perfect. Quickstrike's knee bent the wrong way with a sound like breaking twigs. He collapsed, clutching his ruined leg. 9 seconds had passed. Ironclaw was the last one standing. He was known throughout the academy for his vicious temper and his skill at fighting. Unlike the others, he did not rush forward blindly. He circled Marcus, looking for an opening. his claws extended and ready. "I do not know what kind of trick this is," Ironclaw snarled, "but it ends now." Marcus said nothing. He simply watched, his dark eyes tracking every movement. His breathing was still calm and controlled. His heart rate had barely increased. Ironclaw feinted left, then struck right, with a claw swipe that could have opened Marcus from throat to chest. But the human was not there. He had read the attack in Ironclaw's body language, in the way his weight shifted, in the direction his eyes looked. Marcus caught the striking arm, used Ironclaw's momentum to spin him around, and applied a sleeper hold. The technique cut off blood flow to the brain, without damaging the throat. Ironclaw struggled for maybe 10 seconds before going limp. Marcus lowered the unconscious Centauri gently to the floor. 13 seconds total. Marcus stood among the 5 aliens, his breathing still steady. Thakmor was conscious, but cradling his dislocated shoulder. Drakmor was starting to stir, shaking his head groggily. Quickstrike was sobbing from the pain in his knee. Fleetfoot had a possible concussion from his fall. Ironclaw was unconscious, but breathing normally. Marcus walked back to his study spot and picked up his book. He dusted off the cover and sat down as if nothing had happened. The hydroponics bay was quiet, except for the soft hum of growing systems and the occasional groan of pain from his attackers. Marcus turned a page in his book and continued reading about the Battle of Kepler Station. He understood now why Admiral Martinez had won. The enemy had underestimated human capabilities, just like these students had. They saw primitive technology and assumed primitive tactics. They saw smaller size and assumed weakness. They were wrong on both counts. "Why?" Thakmor gasped, his voice tight with pain. "What are you?" Marcus looked up from his book. For a moment, his eyes held the same cold calculation they had shown during the fight. But then the expression softened, and he was just a quiet student again. "I am exactly what I said I was," Marcus replied. "Someone from Earth." "But the speed, the precision, the techniques," Fleetfoot whispered, holding his head. "No Academy student should be capable of this." "You are right," Marcus said. "No Academy student should be." He went back to reading, but continued speaking. "Earth is what your people call a death world. Do you know what that means? It means everything there wants to kill you. The weather, the animals, the plants, even the bacteria. Humans did not evolve to be the biggest or the strongest. We evolved to survive when everything else wanted us dead." Thakmor tried to stand, but his shoulder would not support his weight. "But you are just a student, a civilian." "Am I?" Marcus asked without looking up. "Did anyone ever check my background before I came here? Did anyone ask what I did before becoming a student?" The aliens looked at each other uncertainly. Academy records listed Marcus as an exchange student from Earth's educational system. They had assumed this meant he was like them, young beings fresh from civilian schools. "The border wars have been going on for 15 years, Marcus continued. "Machines from the outer rim attacking human colonies. Every human over the age of 16 has combat experience. We do not have a choice." He finally looked up from his book, and this time his eyes held something ancient and tired. "I have been fighting since I was 17. Real fighting, not training exercises. Fighting machines that do not feel pain, do not get tired, do not show mercy. I came here hoping to learn something other than how to kill efficiently." Drakmor had managed to sit up, though he looked dizzy. "How many have you killed?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "I stopped counting after the first 100. It seemed unhealthy to keep track." The silence stretched. These young aliens, even the warriors among them, had never faced real combat. Their idea of fighting came from training exercises and honor duels. They could not comprehend what it meant to kill or be killed on a daily basis for years. "I did not want to hurt you," Marcus said quietly. "I tried to walk away. I tried to de-escalate, but you would not let me." He stood up, still holding his book. "The techniques I used are designed to stop opponents quickly with minimal permanent damage. I could have killed all of you in the same amount of time, but I chose not to. Do you understand what that means?" They did. In those 13 seconds, their lives had been completely in his hands. He could have snapped necks instead of dislocating joints. He could have crushed windpipes instead of applying sleeper holds. The fact that they were still alive was not because they had fought well. It was because Marcus Chen had shown mercy to those who had shown him none. "What happens now?" Quickstrike asked through gritted teeth. Marcus walked toward the exit, stepping carefully around the injured aliens. At the doorway, he paused. "Now you decide whether you learned something tonight, or whether you want to try this again sometime, when you have more friends." He left them there in the hydroponics bay, surrounded by the peaceful growing plants, contemplating what they had discovered about the quiet human student. Combat Instructor Veltar was enjoying a quiet evening in her quarters when the emergency alert came through her personal communicator. "Medical emergency in Hydroponics Bay 7. Multiple students injured. Her presence requested immediately." She grabbed her jacket and ran through the corridors of the academy, her mind racing through possibilities. Food poisoning from contaminated plants, equipment malfunction, some kind of training accident. As she approached the hydroponics bay, she could hear voices inside, groans of pain, whispered conversations, the sound of someone crying. Veltar quickened her pace. She stepped through the doorway and stopped dead. 5 students were scattered across the floor in various states of distress. Thakmor sat against a wall, his left arm hanging at an unnatural angle. His cousin Drakmor was conscious, but kept touching his head gingerly, as if checking for damage. Quickstrike was curled up on the ground, clutching his leg. Fleetfoot was sitting upright, but swaying slightly. Ironclaw was still unconscious. "What in the 7 hells happened here?" Veltar demanded. The students looked at each other nervously. None of them wanted to be the first to speak. "Well," Veltar's voice had the tone that made even the bravest students straighten their spines. "We had a disagreement," Thakmor said finally. "A disagreement that put 5 of you in the medical bay?" Veltar's eyes narrowed. "Where is the other student involved in this disagreement?" Another long pause. Fleetfoot pointed weakly toward a spot near the tomato plants. "He was studying over there. After it was over, he just went back to reading his book." Veltar looked around the bay more carefully. There was no sign of a massive fight. A few plant containers were knocked over, probably from Drakmor's collision with the growing rack. Some soil was scattered on the floor. That was all. "Are you telling me that one student did this to all 5 of you?" The silence was answer enough. "Which student?" "Chen," Thakmor whispered. "Marcus Chen." Veltar stared at them in disbelief. Marcus Chen was one of the quietest students in the academy. He was polite, studious, and performed well in classes, but he had never shown any signs of aggressive behavior. The idea that he could single-handedly defeat 5 larger, stronger aliens was absurd. "That is impossible," she said flatly. "Check the security footage," Drakmor said, his voice hollow. "It is all there." 20 minutes later, Veltar sat in the Academy's security office with Chief Security Officer Braktal. The Thorians' 4 eyes were locked on the main display screen as they watched the events in the hydroponics bay. "Start from the beginning," Veltar said. The footage showed Marcus sitting peacefully, reading his book. Then the 5 students entered, surrounding him, blocking his exits. Even without sound, their aggressive posture was clear. "Looks like a standard intimidation scenario," Braktal observed. 5 against 1. The human tries to de-escalate. They watched Marcus stand slowly, hold up his hands peacefully, clearly trying to talk his way out of the situation. Then Thakmor reached out to grab his shoulder. "Here it comes," Braktal said. What happened next defied everything they thought they knew about physics, anatomy, and combat. Marcus moved like liquid lightning. His hands found Thakmor's wrist with surgical precision. The shoulder dislocation happened so fast, it looked like a magic trick. Drakmor's charge and subsequent knockout was almost too quick to follow. The two Rakan attacked simultaneously and were both down before they could land a single blow. Ironclaw's defeat was perhaps the most impressive. The Zenthari warrior was known throughout the academy for his fighting skills. Marcus made him look like a clumsy child. "Replay that last sequence," Veltar said, her voice tight. They watched Ironclaw's attack again, this time in slow motion. Even slowed down, Marcus's movements were almost too fast to track. But what impressed Veltar most was not the speed, it was the precision. Every strike, every block, every throw was executed with perfect technique. "How long did the entire fight last?" she asked. Braktal checked the timestamp. 13 seconds from first contact to Ironclaw hitting the ground. 13 seconds, Veltar repeated. 5 trained warriors. 13 seconds. "There is something else," Braktal said. He fast-forwarded to the end of the footage. "Watch what he does after." They watched Marcus calmly return to his study spot, pick up his book, and continue reading as if nothing had happened. While 5 aliens groaned in pain around him, he turned pages with steady hands and calm concentration. "That is not normal student behavior," Veltar said. "A normal student would be shaking, calling for help, panicking. He acts like this is routine for him." "Maybe it is," Braktal suggested. "I think we need to take a closer look at Mr. Chen's background." An hour later, they sat in Admiral Cathara's office, with Marcus Chen's complete files spread across the desk. The Admiral was a seasoned Zenthari warrior who had commanded fleets in 3 major conflicts. She prided herself on reading people correctly. She had been completely wrong about Marcus Chen. "According to this," Admiral Cathara said, "Chen is not actually a regular exchange student." Veltar leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "Earth's military classification system is different from ours. When his file says student, it does not mean civilian student. It means military academy student. He is here on a scholarship program for active duty personnel." "Active duty?" Braktal's 4 eyes widened. "How is that possible? He looks so young." "Humans mature faster than most species," the Admiral explained. "And according to this service record, Marcus Chen enlisted at age 17. He has been fighting in the border wars for 4 years. She turned the display toward them. Marcus's military record filled the screen. Battle ribbons, commendation medals, unit citations. The list went on and on. Combat infantry specialist, reconnaissance team leader, tactical assault instructor, Purple Heart with 3 clusters. Admiral Cathara looked up. "Do you know what a Purple Heart is?" They shook their heads. "It means wounded in combat. 3 clusters means wounded in combat 3 separate times." And he kept going back. Veltar felt her stomach drop. "What about his kill count?" "That information is classified even from me," the Admiral said. "But his unit history shows deployment to Kepler Rim, Vega Sector, and the Sirius Front. Those were some of the heaviest fighting in the war. We have been teaching combat techniques to someone who has more real battle experience than our entire instructor staff combined," Braktal said quietly. "It gets worse," Admiral Cathara continued. "His psychological profile notes exceptional ability to remain calm under extreme stress, and demonstrates tactical thinking beyond his apparent age. The Academy Placement Committee thought this meant he was unusually mature for a primitive species." "What did it actually mean?" Veltar asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. "It means we have been housing a trained killer who has learned to blend in with civilians." Someone who can shut down his combat reflexes so completely that trained instructors mistake him for a regular student. They sat in silence, processing the implications. Every day for months, Marcus Chen had sat in their classes, participated in their exercises, and lived among students who saw him as weak and primitive. All the while, he had been capable of killing any of them without effort. The restraint he must have shown, Veltar murmured. Every day, being insulted, looked down upon, treated like he was inferior. And he just endured it. Because he chose to, Admiral Kethora said. Someone with his background could have demanded respect from day one. He could have demonstrated his capabilities and forced everyone to acknowledge his skill. Instead, he stayed quiet and tried to fit in. Until tonight, Braktal added. Even tonight, he showed remarkable restraint, the Admiral pointed out. 5 attackers, and all of them will recover fully. He could have killed them all just as easily, but he chose not to. So what do we do now? Veltar asked. Admiral Kethara closed the file with a heavy sigh. First, we transfer those 5 students to disciplinary review. Attacking a fellow student is grounds for expulsion, regardless of the outcome. And Chen? We apologize. Then we figure out how to properly utilize someone with his capabilities. The advanced warfare program would be more appropriate than basic classes. Will he accept a transfer? Braktal wondered. After this incident, he might decide to return to Earth. Only one way to find out, Admiral Kethara said. Veltar, have him report to my office first thing tomorrow. I think it is time we had an honest conversation with Marcus Chen. Yes, Admiral. As they prepared to leave, Admiral Kethara called out one more time. In the future, perhaps we should read the complete files of our students before making assumptions about their capabilities. Yes, Admiral. Walking back through the corridors of the Academy, Veltar reflected on how completely they had misjudged the quiet human student. They had seen what he wanted them to see. A young being from a primitive world trying his best to keep up with more advanced species. The reality was that Marcus Chen had been protecting them all along, not from external threats, but from himself. Tomorrow would bring new questions, new challenges, and hopefully new understanding. But tonight, Veltar could not stop thinking about those 13 seconds of controlled violence, and what it meant that someone capable of such efficiency had chosen to read quietly among the growing plants instead of seeking revenge. It meant that humanity might be even more dangerous than the Confederation had ever imagined, and perhaps more worthy of respect than they had ever known. Marcus stood outside Admiral Kethara's office at exactly 0800 hours, his uniform crisp and his posture respectful but relaxed. He had been expecting this meeting since the incident in the hydroponics bay. Word traveled fast in a closed environment like the Academy, and by morning, everyone knew that the quiet human student had single-handedly defeated 5 of the school's most formidable fighters. The door chimed, and Admiral Kethara's voice called for him to enter. The Admiral's office was large and impressive, with windows overlooking the starfield beyond the station. Awards and commendations from 3 different galactic conflicts decorated the walls. Behind her desk sat a warrior who had commanded entire fleets in battles that shaped the modern galaxy. "Please, sit," she said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. Marcus sat down, keeping his hands folded in his lap. His expression was calm but attentive, ready to accept whatever consequences came from the previous night's events. "I owe you an apology," Admiral Kethara said without preamble. Marcus blinked in surprise. That was not what he had expected to hear. "Admiral, we failed you from the moment you arrived at this academy," she continued. "We made assumptions based on incomplete information. We treated you as something you are not, and failed to recognize what you actually are." She turned her desk display toward him, showing his complete military service record. Marcus's eyes widened slightly as he saw classified information that even he had not known was in his file. Sergeant Marcus Chen, 3rd Reconnaissance Battalion, Earth Defense Corps, 4 years active duty. Deployments to Kepler Rim, Vega Sector, and Sirius Front. Multiple commendations for valor under fire, tactical innovation, and leadership under extreme conditions. "You have been reading my file," Marcus said quietly. "I should have read it months ago," Admiral Cathara replied. "Instead, I let our instructors treat a decorated combat veteran like a struggling civilian student. That was my mistake, and I apologize for it." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing the formal apology from one of the most senior officers in the Confederation military. "Admiral, I never asked for special treatment. I came here to learn, not to show off my background." "And that humility is precisely why you deserved better from us," she said. "Tell me, Sergeant Chen, why did you not correct our misconceptions? You could have demanded appropriate placement from the beginning." Marcus considered his answer carefully. "Because I wanted to see if I could learn to be something other than a soldier. Back home, everything is about the war. Every conversation, every decision, every day. I thought maybe here I could just be normal." "And how did that work out for you?" A slight smile crossed Marcus's face. "Not very well, apparently." Admiral Cathara leaned back in her chair. "The 5 students involved in last night's incident are being transferred to disciplinary review. Attacking a fellow student is grounds for immediate expulsion from the academy. Admiral, with respect, I would like to request that no permanent action be taken against them." She raised an eyebrow. "You want to defend the students who assaulted you?" "They made a mistake based on incomplete information," Marcus said. "The same mistake your instructors made, just with different consequences. They saw what they thought was weakness and reacted according to their cultural training. In a way, they were doing what they thought was right." "That is remarkably generous of you." "It is practical," Marcus corrected. "They learned something last night that no amount of classroom instruction could have taught them. Sometimes your assumptions about an enemy can be wrong. Sometimes the small, quiet opponent is the most dangerous one in the room. That is a valuable lesson for future military officers." Admiral Cathara studied him for a long moment. "You sound like an instructor yourself." "I was, briefly. Back home, I taught new recruits how to survive their first combat deployments. Which brings me to my next question. We clearly cannot continue to waste your talents in basic classes designed for civilian students. I would like to transfer you to our advanced warfare program. You would be working with senior students and experienced instructors on complex tactical scenarios." Marcus was quiet, thinking it over. "The advanced program also includes opportunities to teach," the Admiral added. "We have students from warrior cultures who believe size and strength are the most important factors in combat. They could benefit from learning alternative approaches to warfare." "You want me to teach them what I taught Takmor and his friends?" "I want you to teach them that there are many different kinds of strength, and that underestimating an opponent can be fatal in real combat situations." Marcus nodded slowly. "I think I would like that, Admiral." "Excellent. Your new schedule will be ready by this afternoon. You will also be receiving quarters appropriate to your actual rank and status." "Thank you, Admiral." As Marcus stood to leave, Admiral Cathara called out one more time, "What you did last night, showing restraint under attack, choosing to disable rather than kill. That took more strength than any display of pure combat skill. I want you to know that your instructors noticed that." "Thank you, Admiral." 3 days later, Marcus sat in advanced tactical analysis class, surrounded by senior students from a dozen different worlds. These were the Academy's best and brightest, future fleet commanders and special operations officers. Unlike his previous classes, these students looked at him with respect and curiosity, rather than dismissive amusement. Instructor Halvek, a veteran Thorian officer, was discussing the Battle of Wolf 359. The human fleet was outnumbered 3-1, he explained. Their ships were smaller and less advanced than the enemy's. By all conventional analysis, they should have been annihilated. Instead, they won a decisive victory. Can anyone tell me how? Several hands went up, but Halvek pointed to Marcus. They refused to fight the battle their enemies expected, Marcus said. Instead of engaging in direct fleet combat where they were outgunned, they broke into small groups and attacked supply lines, communication networks, and isolated vessels. They turned it into 100 small battles instead of one large one. Precisely, Halvek said. And this illustrates what principle of warfare? Fight your fight, not theirs, Marcus replied. Use your strengths against their weaknesses, not your weaknesses against their strengths. Excellent. And how does this principle apply to individual combat? A Zenthari student named Velthak raised her hand. She was Thakmor's sister and had heard about the incident in the hydroponics bay. It means that a smaller, faster opponent should not try to match a larger, stronger opponent in raw physical combat. They should use tactics that favor speed and precision over strength. Good. Anyone else? A Vextai student's crystal skin glowed with thought. It also means gathering intelligence about your enemy's capabilities and limitations before engaging. Assumptions can be deadly. Marcus nodded approvingly. These students were learning the lessons he had hoped they would. After class, several students approached him with questions. They wanted to understand human combat techniques, Earth military tactics, and the experiences that had shaped his approach to warfare. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Marcus felt like he was where he belonged. That evening, he sat in his new quarters, larger and more comfortable than his previous room, reading reports from the border wars. His new position came with access to current tactical intelligence, keeping him connected to the ongoing conflict back home. A soft chime announced a visitor. Marcus opened the door to find Kira Velnash standing in the corridor, her crystal skin glowing with its usual purple light. Hello, Marcus. I wanted to congratulate you on your new assignment. Thank you. Please, come in. She entered and looked around the room, noting the military decorations now displayed on his desk and the tactical manuals filling his bookshelf. This suits you better, she observed. It looks like the room of someone who belongs here. It feels that way too, Marcus admitted. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Kira spoke again. I heard about your conversation with Admiral Cathara, about requesting leniency for Thakmor and the others. They made a mistake. Everyone deserves a chance to learn from their mistakes. Even when those mistakes involve trying to hurt you. Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking about all the things he had seen and done in 4 years of war. Especially then, he said finally, forgiveness is not about letting people escape consequences for their actions. It is about choosing not to let their actions change who you are. I came here hoping to be something other than a weapon. Seeking revenge would have made me exactly what I was trying not to be. Kira's glow shifted to a warm gold, the color her people showed for deep respect. You know, she said, when I first met you, I thought you were a predator pretending to be prey. I was wrong. Oh? You are not a predator at all. Predators hunt because they have to, because it is their nature. You are something much rarer. She paused, her glow shifting to contemplative blue. Someone who can fight, but chooses when and why to do so. Marcus considered her words. In all his years of military service, he had never thought of himself that way. But perhaps she was right. Perhaps that was what he had always been, even when he did not realize it. Thank you, Kira. For what? For helping me understand what I was trying to become. The next morning, Marcus began his new role as an instructor in the Advanced Warfare program. His first class was on adaptive combat techniques, how to fight opponents who were bigger, stronger, faster, or better armed than yourself. As he looked out at the eager faces of future military officers from across the galaxy, Marcus felt a sense of purpose he had not experienced since leaving Earth. These students would go on to command fleets, lead special operations teams, and make decisions that would affect billions of lives. The lessons they learned here would shape how they approached conflict and cooperation throughout their careers. Marcus Chen, the quiet student from the Deathworld, had become Marcus Chen, the teacher who would help them understand that strength came in many forms, and that the most dangerous opponent was often the one you underestimated. It was, he thought, a pretty good way to make a difference in the galaxy, even if you were just human.